50 recalls a year, not 50 over a decade. 50 every single year. That is the pace one of the three companies that builds most of America's travel trailers has been setting. And according to a Wall Street Journal investigation published in June of 2025, from 2015 to 2024, no automaker and no RV company on the road issued more recalls than Forest River. Not Ford, not General Motors. A camper company out-recalling the giants of Detroit while building a fraction of the vehicles they do. And here is the detail that should stop you cold. Nearly half of those recalls did not come from a bad part or a flawed design. They came from human error on the assembly line. Workers punching screws straight through the microwaves they were installing because the screws were the wrong length. Furnace vents installed crooked and only caught a month later after the inspector who was supposed to check them had already quit. In 2023, the company pulled back more than 1,100 trailers because someone had wired a genuine fire risk directly into the power distribution center, and the reason was almost too absurd to believe. The factory had run out of the correct fuse, so instead of stopping, they used the wrong one and shipped it. Every one of those failures traces back to the same place, to how fast these machines get thrown together on top of the frame. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand why the single most trusted premium brand in this entire industry might actually be the most alarming name on the list. So before you spend $30, $50, $100,000, let me show you what is really going on underneath. To understand why a camper company out-recalls Detroit, you first have to understand how few hands actually build these things. Because when you walk onto a dealership lot and see 40 or 50 different brand names lined up, it feels like the most competitive market on earth. It is not. Three companies build the overwhelming majority of every recreational vehicle sold in North America: Thor Industries, Winnebago, and Forest River, which is owned by Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, and the manufacturing itself is packed into one tiny corner of the country. According to the RV Industry Association's 2024 profile, nearly 86% of every RV built in the United States and Canada comes out of the single state of Indiana, most of it from one region around Elkhart County, one county building most of a nation's campers. Now here's the part that actually explains those recalls, and it is not laziness, it is a system. In most of these plants, the workers are not paid by the hour. They are paid by the unit, piece rate. Reuters reported on this all the way back in 2017 before the pandemic, describing assembly workers earning a low base wage plus production bonuses, with one former worker saying the rush to hit output made accidents more likely. Then the pandemic hit and demand exploded, and it got dramatically worse. In 2022, the Indianapolis Star published a 15,000-word, 4-part investigation into the working conditions inside these factories, and what it documented was an industry, in their words, riddled with broken bodies and a record number of recalled RVS, even while the manufacturers posted some of the best profits in their history. One worker named Tanner McAfee, who had worked for several Indiana RV makers, told the paper that during the pandemic he went from building 16 RVS a day to 36 a day at a Winnebago-owned plant. 36, more than double. And he described workers who could not keep up being yelled at, and some turning to drugs, even methamphetamine, just to maintain the pace. That is the environment your trailer was built in. Now, when your paycheck depends on how many units you finish and not how well you finish them, the math is brutal and human. You go faster, you skip the second screw, you grab the wrong fuse. Speed beats care every single time, because speed is the thing that pays the bills. And it gets stranger, because Forest River alone sells under more than 45 separate brand names. Wildwood, Salem, Coachman, Cherokee, Aurora, and dozens more. You think you are comparing rivals, weighing one company against another. You are very often comparing nothing but the stickers on trailers that rolled off the same lines, built by the same workers, using the same parts. And underneath almost all of them, cheap or expensive, budget or premium, sits a component from one single supplier. A company called Lippert builds the steel frames, the axles, and the slide-out mechanisms for brands that supposedly compete with each other across the entire industry, which means the exact same frame that is generating recalls for Forest River is bolted underneath a premium brand that, as I am recording this, is under active federal investigation. And that is exactly where this story turns. Because the belief that almost every buyer walks in with, the belief the whole industry quietly depends on, is that price protects you. That if you just spend more and buy the respected name, you climb above all of this mess. So let me introduce you to Grand Design. For years, it was the darling of the industry. It was the brand that full-time RVers trusted with their life savings, the one with a genuine reputation for answering the phone and standing behind its product. It was, for a long time, the answer people gave when you asked what a good one looked like. And on the 9th of October 2024, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration opened a federal investigation into it. The reference number is PE24029, and it covers 55,887 Momentum and Solitude units built between 2017 and 2023. The problem has a name that sounds almost harmless until you understand what it does: frame flex. The frame underneath these trailers bends and deteriorates under normal, ordinary use. And when the frame starts to go, the damage climbs upward through the whole structure. Walls separate from each other, welds crack open, and in 22 of the complaints the agency logged, the cargo or the entry doors actually swung open while the trailer was moving down the highway, in some cases launching objects out onto the road behind it. One injury has already been recorded in connection with it. Then, in April of 2025, the law firm Weitz and Luxembourg filed a class action lawsuit alleging that Grand Design and its parent Winnebago knew the frames were defective, and that instead of fixing the underlying problem, they covered it up. The suit alleges they used non-disclosure agreements, quiet buybacks, and the suppression of negative reviews to keep it out of sight. Sit with that for a moment. The most trusted premium name in towable RVS, accused in federal court of silencing the very customers whose frames were failing beneath them. And this was not some forgotten budget line built down to a price. This was the flagship. This was the good one. Which finally brings us to the only question that actually matters to you. If the cheapest trailers are falling apart from factory sloppiness, and the most expensive, most respected ones are under federal investigation for their frames literally flexing apart, then how in the world are you supposed to know what to buy? And I promised you at the start this answer was simpler than the industry wants you to believe. It is, because it starts with getting rid of the frame problem entirely. Here is what most buyers never figure out, the thing that would save them years of grief. There is an entire category of travel trailer that does not have the failure we have been describing, and the reason is that it is not built the way the others are built. Think about how a normal trailer is made, from the budget forest river lines all the way up to the premium Grand Designs. It is a wooden frame, walls clad in aluminum or a thin sheet of fiberglass, all of it bolted down onto that steel Lippert chassis. It is fast to build, it is cheap to build, and it hides a ticking clock. Water eventually finds the seams. It always does. It seeps into the walls, the wood inside starts to rot, the glue holding the layers together lets go, and the outer skin begins to bubble and separate. That is called delamination, and it is the single biggest destroyer of value in this entire industry. And within about 10 years, that construction drops a trailer's resale value to 30 or 40% of what you paid. Now compare that to a molded fiberglass trailer. Brands like Oliver, built by hand in Hohenwald, Tennessee, and Casita, built factory direct down in Rice, Texas. These are not framed in wood and stapled together at all. They are molded from two fiberglass shells fitted together like a clamshell, with insulation poured between the layers and no wood anywhere in the walls. There is almost nothing inside that structure that can rot, delaminate, or leak, because there are barely any seams for water to attack and no wooden skeleton to soak it up. And the numbers tell the whole story better than any brochure. Oliver builds only around 100 trailers a year, entirely by hand, and a 10-year-old Oliver still sells for roughly 80% of its original price. A Casita holds its value so stubbornly that owners routinely sell them used for close to, or sometimes even more than, what they paid for them new. On the review site RV Insider, Casita averages about 4.7 out of 5 stars, against an industry norm sitting closer to 3.5. One longtime Casita owner put it simply, saying their trailer had been to Alaska, through the deserts, everywhere, and never let them down, as long as you did not expect luxury and thought reliable rather than fancy. That is the trade-off, and it is an honest one. These trailers are smaller, the interiors are simple, and the floor plans are limited, but when you buy the frameless design, you sidestep the single biggest killer of these vehicles before you ever tow it home. That is the practical heart of everything here. If you want to escape the entire cascade of failure we have been walking through, you do not shop for a badge, you shop for a construction method. And if a molded fiberglass egg is simply too small for your family, then you move to the two other names that have quietly earned their place. Airstream
hand riveted from aluminum in Jackson Center, Ohio, in the same factory since 1952, which holds its value like almost nothing else on the road, though you will pay dearly for it, because even the small entry-level Bambi starts around $59,000. Or Arctic Fox, built by a company called Northwood out in La Grande, Oregon, a genuine 4-season trailer made by an independent company a long way from the Indiana machine and its piece rate pace. But even here, I have to be honest with you, because the single most expensive mistake buyers make is assuming that picking a good brand makes them safe all on its own. It does not. And the reason why is the most overlooked detail in this entire story.
So let us go back to that Grand Design frame investigation one more time, because buried inside it is the detail that reframes everything you think you know about buying an RV. Remember, Grand Design does not actually manufacture its own frames. Lippert does. And when the federal investigators started pulling the thread, they found the two companies openly pointing fingers at each other. Grand Design claimed the frame flex was minor, that it was only happening up in the upper deck area, and that it was resulting in what they described as cosmetic defects. Lippert, the company that actually welded the frame together, disagreed and told the agency the failure might extend all the way back to the front axle of the trailer, which, if it is true, is a far more serious structural problem than cosmetic. Think hard about what that means for you as the person standing on the lot. The manufacturer and the supplier could not even agree with each other about how dangerous their own shared product was, while the customer was the one sitting on top of it, towing it at 70 miles an hour down the interstate with their family inside. And that same Lippert frame sits underneath dozens of other brands too. So when people ask me which 3 trailers to avoid, the honest truth is that it was never really about 3 logos on 3 doors. It is about 3 patterns, and once you see them, you can spot them on any lot in the country. The first pattern is the documented recall record, the Forest River story, brands where the sheer volume of manufacturing errors is a matter of federal record, not opinion. The second pattern is the build year. There is a stretch, roughly 2020 through 2022, that people across the entire industry now quietly call the COVID trailers, and owners have documented the specific shortcuts from that era in painful detail. Fresh water tanks held up by a single self-tapping screw on each bracket so the bracket rotates and the full tank drops onto the pavement. Butyl tape sealing quietly dropped from around the roof lights to save time, leaving nothing but a thin bead of sealant, which led straight to leaks, mold, and delamination. Structural supports under beds and showers cut too short, with visible gaps bridged by nothing but staples. That is a build year, not a brand, and it cuts across almost all of them. And the third pattern is simply the cheapest stick-and-tin construction from any volume manufacturer, regardless of the name on the front, because that is where the corners get cut the hardest and the fastest. The badge is the weakest signal you have. The frame, and how the whole thing is built around it, is the real one. So let us come all the way back to where we started. 50 recalls a year. When you first heard that number, it sounded like the story of one bad company that you could simply avoid by shopping elsewhere. But that was never the real story, and now you can see it. The real story is a system where 3 corporations build almost everything, where the workers are paid to move fast instead of careful, where one supplier's disputed frame is bolted underneath the $10,000 trailer and the $100,000 one alike, and where even the brand with the best reputation in the business ended up under federal investigation with a class action lawsuit attached. In a system like that, the brand name stamped on the front is not a promise of safety. It is a marketing decision and nothing more. And once you truly see that, the entire way you shop has to change. So here is the one small concrete thing to carry out of this video, the single habit that beats every recall record and every clever badge on the lot. Before you sign anything, do not ask what brand it is. Ask how it is built. Get down and physically look underneath it at the frame. Ask whether the walls are molded fiberglass or wood and staples, because that one answer predicts more about the next 10 years than the logo ever will. If it is a Grand Design, ask specifically whether it has the newer Omega frame that they redesigned, or the older one that started this whole saga. Ask what model year it was actually built, and treat anything from 2020 through 2022 with real, open suspicion until it proves itself. And whatever you are looking at, spend the few $100s on an independent inspection before you ever hand over a check, because that inspector is the only person in the entire transaction who does not get paid based on how fast you sign. The frame was there the whole time, underneath everything, holding up the entire structure,
and almost nobody ever thinks to look at it. Now you will. If this changed how you are going to walk onto that lot, subscribe, because there is a whole industry counting on you not knowing this.